Good morning, guys. Welcome back to Jerm's Workshop. Today we're blowing out the sprinkler system. So let me say that every sprinkler system is different. You have some sprinklers that are supply the water through a well, some supply the water through city water, and so there's different ways of shutting off your sources. Usually in your valve box there's going to be some sort of ball valve if you're on city water, and you're going to turn that off so that the water doesn't keep continuing to go into the valve box. On my particular system I have a well, so what I do is I just turn off the breaker on the wall for the well, and we'll do that now. Okay, so what you see here on the wall is my pump start relay, which the wires, you don't have to do anything with that, it's all internal, but it gets a signal from the timer whenever it calls for water and sends a signal through the wiring to the valve box or to the breaker to start the pump. So now we're gonna turn the breaker off on the wall. Just look at your circuit panel. You've got here breaker 13 and 15, which is a double 30 amp breaker, 220, and we're gonna flip those to the off. There's no danger in cycling these breakers. Don't worry about getting in there and getting electrocuted. You guys know that I hate electricity, and so that's not a big deal. I can cycle those breakers all day long, and I'm confident that I'm not going to get injured. Okay, so I've got my air compressor here, and the way I do mine is I'll turn on the switch and I'll turn on this ball valve here, and it runs through a big hose that goes down into this hose reel, and my well is a decent distance away, but not too far, probably 50 feet or so. So I have a length of hose strung out there, and I'll hook it up to the valve box, and we'll go show you that now. Alright guys, so to do this sprinkler system blowout, the science behind this is we're going to take the water out of the equation. We're going to stop pumping water through the valves and through the pipes, and we're going to replace it with air. So I went down to my local hardware store, and the Hayesville True Value Hardware, and I made this adapter to go from a 1/4 inch air nozzle to a garden hose, because in my sprinkler system I've got just a boiler valve out there. I'll show you here in a minute, and that's what this garden hose end plugs into, and then I can hook up my air hose to this top part, and it just pumps air through the system instead of water, and it's super simple. And you guys know how I feel about blue handle pliers if you watch my grab and go tool bag. So I grabbed these channel locks made in USA out of my tool bag, and we're gonna go hook this up. Alright, so here we are at the valve box. All you do is remove it. Who knows what you're going to find in there. But in my valve box, I've got this boiler valve down in there. And we'll just hook that up, hook our fitting up to that, and open the valve. That's also for an auxiliary zone. So you can run zone, I think on 11 on mine. Doesn't open up any of the sprinklers, but if you want to hook up a water hose or something to water with, or the kids to play with and the sprinklers, you can do that. So here we go. Let's just screw that on there. And then I'll tighten it down with my pliers. Alright, I got that tightened down with my pliers. Now I'll just hook up the air hose. And the valve is open. I just opened it. No, I didn't. And the valve is, I'm opening the valve. And then that'll allow air to flow through the lines. One thing I forgot to mention, why do we do this? Why do we blow out sprinklers? It's not just so that the sprinkler companies can make a bunch of money in the fall. It's so that if the pipes freeze over the winter time when it gets cold, they won't burst. If they have air in them, it can get as cold as you want. Most pipes are below the frost line, but if your pipes do have some water in them still and that water freezes and expands, it'll burst your pipes, damage your valves, and cause you lots of problems in the spring. Alright, so now we're going to go in and turn on the air compressor and run zone 1. Alright, so every sprinkler timer is different. This is a Nelson sprinkler timer. A lot of you might have a Rainbird, but they all basically do the same thing. It sends a signal based off of time to the pump start relay or to your valves, and it opens the valves and allows each zone to water. So all I'm going to do is go to the auto setting and then run it down to manual. That'll open zone 1. Then I'll go over and turn on the air compressor and we'll watch zone 1 start. Okay, so zone 1's running. That's just air pushing what's water in the system out. So you can see how much water is still in the system. And you'll see it'll start blowing air with a little bit of water mist. See, that one started. Now that one. This one should be next. Usually my zones are pretty big, so usually I will run it through a couple times, because as it starts blowing air, it loses pressure and doesn't have as much pressure to get the rest of the water out of the system. So each zone I'll cycle through twice. You can see maybe how these at the end, they're barely trickling. Okay, that one's good. This last one on the end of this zone. Still going. Guys, so my zone is made up of 1-inch PVC with 1/2-inch poly pipe going to each head. There's a lot of water in each one of these zones. Alright, so that one's got air coming out. Now I will let the air compressor recover, and then I'll move on to zone 2. So as you get back into the garage, just turn your valve back off, and then I'll go back over to the timer and turn it from manual back to time. That will stop sending the signal to the pump start relay and to the valve box to open that first zone valve. Pro tip number 63. This is a good time when you're blowing out your sprinklers to make sure that your nozzles are all spraying right. If they're clogged or stuck, you need to clean out those filters and change out the nozzle possibly. It's pretty easy. You just unscrew them and you can replace them. Also check your gear drives and all your misters and make sure that everything is turning and rotating and spraying the way you want it to. It's easier to do it now than it is whenever you start up in the spring. Last thing I want to show you guys, if you've got soaker hoses in your flower beds, you want to make sure that all of these emitters are unclogged and water's coming out of them. You can hear air coming out of them. It's a good check for your soaker hoses Because if those are clogged up and still have water in them in the springtime, you'll have a lot of repairs to do. Alright guys, so we've got all the zones blown out, gone around twice. That's it. So you just unhook your air hose, unscrew your adapter, and close your boiler valve. And as always, thanks for joining Germ's workshop. Remember, 10 in, 10 out.